Most people think the superfood revolution started in a California juice bar 10 years ago. They're wrong. It started 2,000 years ago on a teardrop-shaped island in the Indian Ocean. Imagine a civilization that built skyscrapers out of brick while Rome was still a village. But their greatest achievement wasn't the stone, it was the chemistry. The people of ancient Lanka didn't just eat. They engineered their bodies. They had a grain that could sustain a soldier for 3 days of combat without a second meal. They had a sweetener that didn't cause a sugar crash. And they had a secret ingredient so powerful, the Roman Empire was willing to pay for it in solid gold. We'll uncover the grain of giants, the tree of life that saved a nation from famine, and the royal feast that took 3 days to prepare. This is the ultimate guide to ancient Lankan nutrition. Let's start with the base of every meal: rice. But not the bleached, stripped-down white rice in your pantry today. In the era of King Pandukabhaya, rice was a sacred technology. Archaeologists have identified over 400 distinct indigenous varieties. Some, like suandal, were grown specifically for their aroma to stimulate the brain. Others, like kalu hinati, were reserved for the sick and the elderly because they acted as a natural antibiotic. But the king of them all was Lohitha Shali, a deep, blood-red grain. Why red? Because that pigment is packed with anthocyanins, the same antioxidants you find in expensive blueberries today. The ancient Sinhalese engineers who built the massive wiwas, reservoirs, weren't eating empty carbs. They were eating complex, slow-release energy. This is why a 5th century laborer could move tons of granite in 100-degree humidity. They weren't just strong, they were biologically optimized. And here's the mystery. They cooked this rice in clay pots, but never alone. They used amu and mung, millets and green grams, to create a complete protein profile that rivals any modern protein shake. Here's a fact that breaks most people's brains. There were no chilies in ancient Sri Lanka. No green chilies, no red flakes, no burning heat. The Portuguese wouldn't bring chilies for another 1,000 years. So how did the ancients create flavor? They used the black gold. Ancient Ceylon black pepper was the world's most potent spice. It didn't just add heat, it served as a digestive catalyst. The ancients understood that if your body can't burn the food, what they called agni, or digestive fire, nutrients are wasted. They layered this with true cinnamon. Not the cheap cassia you find in supermarkets, but the delicate multi-layered bark found only on this island. They discovered that cinnamon regulated blood sugar, essential when your diet is 70% grains. Every curry back then was actually a medicinal decoction, designed to keep the blood thin and the heart strong. If you were a traveler in the 10th century, you wouldn't find a single farm. Instead, the entire island was an edible garden. The jackfruit tree was the mother of the house. One single tree could provide 200 massive fruits a year. The ancients called it herali. They ate the seeds for protein, the young fruit as a meat substitute, and the ripe fruit as a dessert. It was the ultimate food security. But look closer at the forest floor. You'd find gotu kola, the scented leaf of memory. Legend says elephants live so long because they eat gotu kola. The royal physicians prescribed it to the king's advisors to ensure they made wise decisions. Today, science confirms it. It's a powerful neuroprotective herb. And then, there was the keto palm. While the rest of the world was struggling with honey or crude syrups, the Lankans were tapping the keitel tree. The sap was boiled down into hakuru, jaggery. This wasn't just sugar. It was a rich, smoky complex of minerals that didn't spike insulin. It was the original clean keto sweetener. Now, let's step inside the palace of Sigiriya or Anuradhapura. What does a state dinner look like in 600 AD? The king's plate was a masterpiece of 6 tastes. Ayurveda dictates that for a human to feel satisfied, a meal must contain sweet, sour, salty, bitter, pungent, and astringent. On the king's golden lotus leaf, you'd find ambal thial. Fish preserved with sun-dried guraka, a sour fruit that melts the fats in the fish. Polos. Young jackfruit slow-cooked for 12 hours over a low coconut shell fire until it has the texture of tender beef. Lotus root, sliced thin and fried in cold-pressed sesame oil. Wild boar, marinated in ginger, garlic, and heavy pepper. But the drink was the secret. It wasn't wine, it was herbal gruel or kenda. Made from the juice of squeezed greens and the water from red rice, it was served warm to start the digestion. By the time the main course arrived, the king's stomach was a furnace, ready to extract every ounce of power from the food. So, if this diet was so perfect, why don't we eat like this anymore? The answer is colonization. When the Western powers arrived, they wanted cash crops. They ripped out the forest gardens to plant coffee, then tea, then rubber. The 400 types of rice were replaced by a few high-yield white varieties. Today, Sri Lanka has some of the highest rates of diabetes in South Asia. Our ancestors, the men who built the 400-foot-tall Jetavanaramaya stupa, would be horrified. They didn't have hospitals, they had kitchens. They didn't have pills, they had ambal thial and kalu hinati. But the story isn't over. In the remote villages of the north-central province, these ancient seeds are being found again. Farmers are returning to the red rice. Chefs are rediscovering the power of the 6 tastes. The ancient foodie isn't just a history lesson, it's a blueprint. Because if we want to build a future as grand as our past, we have to start by eating like the giants who came before us. If you could bring back one ancient food to the modern world, what would it be? The memory-boosting Go-To Cola or the ruby red rice? Let us know in the comments below. If you found this deep dive fascinating, hit that subscribe button. Until next time, stay hungry for history.